This is Nicola talking to the postman. Bit of a riveting listen on the podcast. Nicola. Nicola.
You are the postal. Phoebe's collection service coming to the door. Even when she's in Amsterdam, I'm getting things delivered to her. Sorry, Judith.
Was that the postman?
It was indeed. He's very chirpy too, which is always nice. We like a chirpy postman.
We do.
Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Nicola, how are you today?
I'm really good. The sunshine's making me feel really cheerful.
Oh, the sunshine's good here too, actually. When I looked earlier, it was a cloudless sky. There are clouds now, but they're nice ones, so that's okay.
Yeah, it's definitely spring has sprung, hasn't it? I'll have to go and do some, what's that word? Pruning soon.
Gardening, yes. What's that word? Gardening.
I was looking out and I can see buds appearing on things. That means it needs a severe cutting back before it all goes completely mental.
So tell me about your week. Do you have excitements to share?
I do, yes. Sarah's arrived back from New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
She's not been massively convinced about New Zealand, I have to say. I think it was where my dad chose to live, which was it was somewhere very much like Durrington in Worthing, but in New Zealand. So you had to go half an hour to 45 minutes in a car to get anywhere half decent, like a town or a pub or anything like that, or a beach. So it sort of defeated the object a bit, really, for her. But she had a lovely time seeing Dad and Eileen, and she got a lot of work done from all those people that she attracted just before she went. And she's come back a transformed woman, you know, ready to carry on with the good work of helping people with WordPress.
Excellent.
It's very nice to see her. So what else has happened? Business has gone absolutely bonkers. I've accidentally stumbled across a seam of people who need traffic very, very much and who are willing to pay for it, which is rather splendid. I'm not, you know.
Very good. Yeah,
basically what I'm doing is I'm just targeting each big conference that's coming up. And so I'm running a set of ads that says, you know, going to traffic and conversion. Well, when you've learned how to build your funnel, you'll need hot leads to put in the front of it, won't you?
Oh, yes, what a good idea.
Yeah, and now and then I ran a set of ads saying just been to traffic and conversion, and literally just targeting the people who the speakers who were there. So anyone who liked any of the speakers would see those ads very tightly targeted to them. And then now I'm running it on I can't remember what it's called now, but it's a Russell Brunson event that's happening. So I'm running it again, and it seems to me like it's a really good way of targeting people who like the big speakers but who also need traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's working. So my little Setmore diary is groaning under the appointments. The other thing I've done is I've completely reorganised my diary and moved all my commitments, apart from these recordings, into one day a month, so that I can do spontaneous things like go on holiday or go and work from somewhere else should I feel the need.
You did hint at that last week or the week before, I think. That's good.
Yeah, and the other thing is I've moved all my appointments into the afternoons because I realised I'd had lots of things set up that were beeping at me, reminding me and making me feel stressed. So, you know, I don't need a reminder to check Facebook ads every morning. I do it naturally. So I've just moved all the unnecessary things out of my diary to make it, you know, because I've always had this thing about having an empty diary means freedom. well, I'd loaded up my diary with things to remind myself about that I don't actually need reminding about. So
No, very good.
yeah, things were beeping at me that didn't need to be. What about your week then?
Well, do you remember last week we had a little chat about the thing I put on Facebook about the weather and 38 people talking to me about their weather?
Yes.
Do you remember that one?
I do remember it very well, yes.
Well, I've surpassed it this week with one that got 77 interactions with it. And I shared a photo it was a black and white photograph of a little girl having a tea party with a dog and some cats and a teddy. And it had a very nice, slightly old-fashioned message with it. It's not our job to toughen our children up to face a cruel and heartless world. It's our job to raise children who will make the world a little less cruel and heartless.
Oh, nice.
And 77 people like that. Now, it was a photo that had been published by an author. So I went to his site to see what he was doing. And his book is about animals. So everything on his page is about animals. So he's touching into the animal lover world. So maybe it was the black and white photograph of the little girl having a tea party with her cats and dogs as much as the saying that went with it. I don't know. But what it's reminded me is that last week 38, this week 77, I'm feeling chuffed with myself. This is nothing. I have a client who is in the vintage world, which is something that you would be more interested in than me. Yeah, exactly, because it's about style and all that, and that's kind of your stuff. But she regularly shares things that get 13,500 likes.
Good God!
I know.
And this is from your. Can I just check something? So the thing you shared and last week that was from your page, was it?
No, that wasn't. But this is my client does share it on her page. Yes, she gets 13. And she shared a photograph, vintage, obviously. So she shared a photograph of the brownies. Do you remember being in the brownies?
I was briefly in the brownies, yeah. Before
I was briefly in the brownies. It's not for rebels, really, is it? No. The brownies. But she did share a photograph, and that got 13,500 likes. And she shared something the other day, which was do you remember playing post offices? You could get a game where you could stamp things and have envelopes. She shared a photograph of that, and that got tens of thousands of likes as well.
Can you ask her a question for me? I'd be intrigued to know if she's boosting those posts to reach more of her.
No, I don't believe she is, but I will ask. I'll double check, but I don't believe she is. No, I think it's just that the point I'm trying to make here is that some of these things resonate in unexpected ways. Who would have thought the brownies or playing post offices or having a tea party? I suppose that's what my tea party has in common. It harks back to people's younger lives, and that's what vintage is all about a bit as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is interesting because it disproves the theory that Facebook are only allowing you to reach your followers on your page if you pay for it.
Well, I think it's all up in the air at the moment. I think the point I want to make is that you don't really know what people will like, but what's important is engagement. And when you see something that they like, there's some clues there.
Another question for her is, can she say if she saw an uptick of new likes after that?
Okay.
Because that's worth knowing. That's really the metric by which you measure the success. It's all very well getting engagement, but if it doesn't lead to an uptick in new likes, then from people who've seen the thing shared by their friends.
I will, when I listen to the podcast, I will remember to go and ask her both of those questions.
Okay, cool. That would be really useful.
What's fueled your fire this week?
Well, you're going to like this one, Judith, quite a lot. Paul McKenna's 3 Things That Transform Your Life.
Yay! How's it going?
I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear waiting for you. You kept threatening to meditate with me on Skype, so I went and I bought the damn thing. And it arrived, and yes, it's got a DVD and a CD and a downloadable credit card thing on it. And I read the book I treat Judith. I think I'm turning into you. I treated myself to a morning in bed reading it. And then I promptly got out my phone and downloaded the thingies and spent a very nice hour meditating. It took an hour because I managed to get my earphone things the wrong way round, and I realised that I was meditating my right brain with my left brain and the other way round for half an hour.
So you had to do it again.
Probably caused lasting damage, but no, and I really, really liked it. And you said, didn't you? Something stuck in my mind that you said that it's not often you come across a personal development ritual that you really look forward to doing.
Yeah.
But I absolutely felt so fantastic after those meditations.
I know. There must be something built into it. It's a bit like I have this belief that Starbucks have made their coffee addictive so that we have to keep going back and having it. I think Paul McKenna must have built something into these that the enjoyment factor of doing it is so good we want to keep doing it. It's a sort of inbuilt success somehow, isn't it?
I know. And the thing is, I'm someone who think of myself as completely unhypnotizable.
Yeah.
Whether it's because I'm doing it I've done it twice now since as well in the morning. I'm not doing it at night so I don't fall asleep. I'm doing it when I'm awake, and I am definitely losing patches, where I suddenly come to the realization that I've never heard this bit before, or he's never said that before, or I've just, it's come to the end and I'm just coming up out of some sort of trance because I don't remember the last 20 minutes. So
and have you at the end of the book, there's 28 days, are you filling out the questions?
I am. I'm not doing it in the book though. I'm doing it in my journal, but that's a nice structure for my journal as well. And then I went and looked up the havening technique, which he shares as well. And I've done that 2 or 3 times now, and I can't say I've noticed anything dramatic, but I enjoyed doing it. It was easy to do and easy to remember, so I think it would be very useful.
I think that may be the one that's making the difference.
Well, I'm not saying that anything's actually changed necessarily, but the deep relaxation on those audios is just fantastic.
Yes, I know. And what I think is really good about the 28-day program, where he recommends that you listen to a couple of them are constant and then you can choose whatever else you like. Then you're required to write down 3 new things I've noticed about myself or my life today include. Now, that's a really good thing to get people to do, because you might have improvements or changes and not notice them. But if you're required to notice them, what happens is over the 28 days, and I'm on day 28 today, it builds. So you're thinking, oh, I am more relaxed, I am more resilient, I am more optimistic, I am more upbeat. You're measuring. You know what we always say, what you measure improves. And I think that's a really canny thing of his, because if you stick to that, you couldn't possibly end up not in a better place, if that makes sense.
I definitely think my impulse to rearrange my diary so that I've got more free time in the mornings for self-care and more time to be able to go on impromptu trips has definitely sprung out of my meditating with Paul. I suddenly realised that I'm actually in a position financially where I don't have to work every hour that God sends. I'm not creating anything new, so I don't have to create new stuff. I can just keep doing what I'm doing and start living the life that I aspired to, which was to be able to travel and go wherever I want and have a free diary.
Well, how perfect is that?
I know. I thought you'd like it.
That leads very, very nicely into what's fueled my fire, which is, I don't know if you've seen this yet, and if you haven't, I hope that you'll watch it. Last week, you reminded us of that story that we're told quite often, the one about the so-called Harvard graduate that tells the Mexican fisherman how to organise his life better so that he can just sit on the beach
That's right, yeah.
watching the fish or whatever it is. I saw that happen in real life this week on a programme on BBC Two called A Cook Abroad. And this week's episode, number 5, was Rick Stein in Australia. Have you seen that yet?
No, I haven't, no.
Well, I'm not really interested in Rick Stein or Australia, but there's not much on at the moment, so I was watching this. And he went to talk about Sarah living in the middle of nowhere. He went to Tasmania. And the whole thrust of the programme was about how, when he first went to Australia as a young man, it was a culinary desert.
Yeah.
But like everywhere, it's not anymore. And particularly, you can eat things in Australia that you can't eat anywhere else because they're grown there, or they're local meat things are things we wouldn't eat, like crocodile burgers or whatever. Anyway, in Tasmania, which, as you know, is a tiny little spot, there were 2 examples of the Mexican fisherman story. There was a very, very nice man who took him out on a boat. He had to get on a seaplane, first of all, and then he got on a boat to go and fish for abalone. Do you know what abalone is?
I do, and I love abalone.
Well, there you go. The fisherman that fishes for abalone, it's such a valuable catch, he only has to put his boat out on 100 days of the year.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he met a sushi chef, Japanese, in a tiny town in Tasmania. And they've converted the Tasmans, if that's what you call them, Tasmanians, I don't know what they're called,
Tasmanians.
to sushi. I mean, and who would imagine that, in the middle of, I don't even really like sushi very much, but here we are in a tiny town, a proper Japanese sushi chef has a restaurant there, but he only opens twice a week for lunch. The rest of the time, he's having a life. Now, a few years ago, it would have been very hard for me to either expect to hear you say what you've just said or convince you that really life is just as important, if not more so, than our businesses. And funnily enough, we called this podcast, didn't we, Your Business and Your Life, intending to give it equal weight. And it's really nice to hear what you've just said. And then I saw two living examples of people who've got their work-life balance in favour of their life. And that's what we all want.
Yeah, I see it every day in the teens. They just live in the moment, and I wasn't like that at that age because difficult childhood, mad mother, etc. And I just see them being happy in the moment, and it's so joyful to watch it. I mean, I just took Phoebe and Couture off to Amsterdam. They went to Amsterdam for a couple of days for no better reason than they could, and they just. And they could just sit in Amsterdam in a coffee shop, or 3 or 5, and stay in a lovely hotel. And it cost them nothing for the flights and the hotel. And it was an adventure. That's why they did it. They just wanted to go because it was an adventure. And I thought, I need more adventures.
Well, I wonder at what stage maybe in growing our businesses, we were so focused and so head down that the balance very definitely swayed over the wrong side, didn't it? It was all business and all work, and it's too easy perhaps to do that if you actually love your business and your work, or you're very driven, or whatever it is. But every time my clients report in and say rather sheepishly they've been having a life, I applaud them, because I think, that abalone, 100 days a year, if I could make my living, and I probably could, in 100 days a year, that's the way to do it.
It is indeed. And I'll tell you another thing that might have come out of Paul McKenna's hypnotising me, is I've agreed to go to a social event in Shoreham on Friday night. I don't know what prompted that. It's the Shoreham by Sea Facebook group get together, and I've said, yes, I'll come.
I really like it when people say things like, I don't know what prompted that, because frankly, it's got to have come from the hypnosis, hasn't it?
Yeah, because it's not something I would normally go along to.
No.
And I went to the jazz last night, so yes, it's been a rocking week all round, really, for life.
The first time I told you about the book, I said, I've left the house. I mean, funnily, maybe that's one of the things it gets you to do, go out more, who knows?
Well, subconsciously, obviously, there's the desire to do things that one doesn't do, and then it releases that desire.
Maybe.
What's our client challenge of the week then?
Well, I didn't plan it this way, but genius, based on the conversation we've just had. A couple of my clients on Monday in their weekly reports, maybe 3 of them said, and there was a big consensus, I don't want to run a business. I just want to make a living doing something I love.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
Well, it is, because you and I we love business, and we have wanted to run businesses, and I've run multiple businesses, and we run them together and separately, and we love the whole thing of business. But a bit like you saying about Phoebe and Couture just living in the moment and sitting in a cafe in Amsterdam, not all of my clients want to run. They're making a distinction. That's what they're doing. They're saying, I don't want to run a business for its own sake, but I do want to make a living doing something that I love. And it may be a first stage decision, because what you and I both know is that, and I don't want to spoil it for them, but further down the line, what can happen is that you realise what you've done is you've created another version of a job if you're not careful. So, you're exchanging time for money, and that reaches a point of limitation. But I'm very drawn to the concept of it, and it's quite similar to the abalone fisherman again. They caught one and they opened it up and they put it in breadcrumbs and they had it, lightly fried on the back of the boat with a Tasmanian Chardonnay, and the sun was shining and it just looked like heaven. I mean, if that's not making a living doing something you love, I don't know what is.
I've got a ray of hope for you here, because I've been, you probably know I've been very, since interviewing him at Christmas, James Shramko, who lives in Australia, lives in a place called Manly. It's a suburb of Sydney, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
He is running a multi-million-pound business with a team of 50 outsourcers and various people around the world. And he works from his home office in his house with 4 or 5 children and goes surfing every day. And he goes to the Philippines once a quarter and has a meeting. He's got a team leader over there and a couple of managers. And he goes over there and they get all the team in and they go through the goals for the next quarter and how they've done over the last quarter. And they're incentivized by profit shares, which they only get as long as they remain in James's employ. So that's a very good motivating thing. And Rich Sheffrin does that too. So you actually hire proper people after a certain while, but you hire people to manage them. And so you're not managing your team, you're just managing 2 or 3 managers. So that's how, and the other thing is he interviewed someone last night who I was listening, who's got a multi-billion business. There's 3 business partners and they all work remotely from their homes, and they have a team all around the world working all different time zones, and it's all based around the outcomes. So they're not micromanaging these people or sitting over them or getting them to fill in what they do every minute. They're just getting them to fill in daily reports on what's been achieved, and they're not interested in when they achieved it. So I've always thought that in order to have a decent size Facebook ads agency, for example, once it gets beyond the point of me being able to run the ads for the clients, and I think that will be quite soon, judging by my Setmore diary groaning. But I've always felt in order to do that, I would have to go and take an office at Base Point down the road and get a real team like Fresh Egg have. They've demonstrated that you can make a digital agency a success locally like that. But actually, having listened to James with his multi-billion business and listened to this chap he was interviewing with his multi-billion business, I don't think you need to. So I think we all need to stop thinking that building a business has to stop us being able to travel the world and eat abalone on the back of a boat.
Or that it needs to be done in a particular way. But I think it's interesting that people are saying this of their own volition. Well, one person said it first, and then everybody piled in and said, oh, so agree. So, the world perhaps falls in being self-employed. You don't have to build a business necessarily unless you want to. And some of my clients are saying they don't want to. They just want to make a living doing something that they love. And I think that's very appealing sounding, actually.
Yeah, but in order to continue the marketing side, they don't want to go into that feast and famine thing that so many self-employed people fall into. So there has to be an element of automating their systems, which is what.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to become a business. They just need to create enough business for themselves for as long as it's just them, and they choose to run it like that without feast and famine. And I find that most clients catch on to that sooner or later once they align themselves with the right sort of marketing for them, which isn't onerous. They turn a corner, I find. And quite a lot of them have.
What's your definition of a business then? Let's get that clear for everyone listening.
Well, I certainly now would not be. Well, I sold my accountancy business in '97. And since then, I've never had one, what the Americans would call a bricks and mortar business. Even when you and I had quite a sizable business, we didn't have premises.
No.
And we worked sort of virtually, mostly virtually.
Yeah, I think we had meetings once a quarter in nice hotels.
And we had other people who worked virtually.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to be creating. So I think the answer to your question is the E-Myth definition, which is something that runs without my having to go to work. And I've done that too. And it's different, but it isn't necessarily better. It's a bit like, do you work in partnership with other people or on your own? They're different. They're not better. Is instant coffee the same thing as real coffee? No, it's different. It's actually worse. But you can have different things that appeal to different people. So I wouldn't want one that had staff or premises or stock anymore. I don't think. Mostly there's not a need for it. I mean, retail's completely disappearing, isn't it? Supermarkets included. It's all being delivered. Yeah. So I wouldn't want one of those anymore. But I don't want to make too big of this today because I don't want to upset those clients who are in that place. But you and I both know that if you create a living doing something that you love, the ultimate restriction on that is you are mostly exchanging time for money, and that is a job by another name. So there comes a point when that has not the same frustrations, but some of the same frustrations of having a job.
I'm
which
rapidly
is,
approaching the point where I need to make a decision about hiring a full or part-time VA. I'm thinking full-time because I'll get her to do my social media as well. And then my next hire would have to be someone to train to do Facebook ads with me for me. Because obviously if I was sick or something, there wouldn't be anyone to look at the Facebook ads every day. So, and I don't.
I would split. I wouldn't have a full-time VA. I'd have a part-time VA doing VA stuff,
Yeah.
and a part-time social media person doing social media stuff. I don't think they're the same job at all.
Well, I'm very particular about the way I want my social media doing. That's the problem. So,
Okay, I think that's a particular skill that some love, and I think a good VA is about admin really, and about left-brained and left side of the wealth dynamics thing. Whereas I think social media is outgoing and people who are creative and love making connection. I think they're different skills. I would split those, honestly. I would. In fact, actually, I don't think it's a problem. You could build quite a big business on 3 part-time people there you've just described.
Yeah, I could, couldn't I?
And you've got a bit of experience of doing that from Raw, so
I did. I had a team there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's holding me back? I don't know really. I don't like feeling responsible for people in terms of their income. So,
Well, that's a choice, Nicola. And if they're part time, they won't be your only person. And if they have to move on because of the uncertainty, then that's their choice. There's no responsibility. We know this from the Synchronicity book, don't we?
well, we know that that's one of the entrepreneur's traps, and it's one I regularly fall into.
Yeah, but you don't need to. It's a choice. You've learned so much and grown so much. You don't need to fall into that trap anymore.
True. Yeah, and to be honest, that's another thing that's come out of the meditating is that I actually feel deeply confident that the things that I've put in place and that are working now will continue to work. I feel very abundant. Very abundant.
Marvellous.
Yes.
Marvellous. So actually, I think we all just want to make a living doing something we love. And that might be growing a big business. How old is James Schramko, for instance?
Oh, he's early 40s. So he's about.
You see, if I was an Australian bloke in my early 40s, I might want a business like that. But as a British woman in my late 50s, I don't want a business like that. So I think there's, he's building something up that he could sell at some point so that he can watch the fish on the Mexican beach.
Well, apparently he lives opposite. He's got a quite a bit of acreage of farm land in a very, very expensive suburb of Sydney because he bought a while ago before Manly became fashionable. So he's got an amazing beachfront property. He just walks out the door and down to the beach and surfs every day. So, watching his life from afar has made me realise that it is possible to build something bigger. And I still have that burn inside me because that's what I imagined as a little girl when I thought about being a princess or a businesswoman. I thought about, a proper business. So I suppose I'm thinking a proper business, but without premises or full-time staff or all the responsibility and overhead.
And you couldn't have conceived of that sort of business when you were a little girl because it wasn't possible. It's only the internet that's made that's possible, isn't it?
Well, James and this guy he was interviewing, I wish I could remember his name. He met him when he went on. He won a week with people like Mavericks Adventurers. So there's an boys adventure club. They all go off and drive things in the desert and do that sort of stuff. And he met this chap on that, and so they've remained friends ever since. And he was saying, it wouldn't be possible for either of them to run their businesses like this even 10 years ago. It's really the last 3 or 4 years that's, with the outsourcing phenomena and everything that's made it possible.
Yes.
So interesting. So the thing that worries me about the clients that say, I just want to make a living doing what I love is, I suppose, as long as they do things like accumulate a financial cushion so that if they have a quiet patch or whatever, they're fine, aren't they? But they are going to have to carry on doing what they're doing.
I think you're focusing on what could go wrong. You're focusing on you're saying, well, it could be feast and famine and they will need a cushion. I don't think that's any different in a business. You need a cushion and it could be feast and famine. I think that what they're saying is, I'm only one woman working from home. I've never had any desires to be a business owner. I don't want to start and create and run the business for the sake of it. I just want to do something lovely and make a living at it. And I think that's very attractive. And I think possible.
Well, in a way, it's what you're doing, isn't it, with the coaching?
Yeah.
But then you are building a membership site as a part of it as well, aren't you? So
not well. I mean, I have recurring income in both of the groups, but that just that just smooths out your feast and famine issue.
Well, absolutely.
And when you,
Out the cash.
yeah, but no, I don't. I mean, it requires me to be there, but that's something that qualifies on the doing something I love.
Yeah. I think that's the key.
If I could do it in 100 days instead of 365 days, that would be very appealing.
Yeah, I think that definitely is the key, is to encourage clients to think about how could I create recurring revenue from me just doing what I love at home, because that is the absolute key. And they were both saying this last night. That is the absolute key, is to because one of the $1 billion business, he sells nutritional and brain enhancing supplements. And he says that is a beautiful recurring model, because once people start taking it and enjoy the benefits, they want to keep taking them. So they keep ordering. And as long as you keep the quality of the product high and the customer support high, then they're not going to go anywhere else for them, because they.
Well, interestingly, that was how Tim Ferris built his 4-hour work week on selling supplements.
Yeah. Apparently, it's absolutely monstrously huge business in America and Australia. I'm only assuming it is here too. I know people like Justin Brooke, who I admire immensely, take brain enhancing vitamins and minerals and combinations of things to try and enhance their brain performance. I often wonder if I should think about it. I don't like the concept of being psychologically addicted to something, even if you're not physically addicted to it.
Yeah, I think the supplements game might be a bit of a racket, but probably better I don't say that out loud.
Well, I think there are good suppliers and not good suppliers. They talked a lot about that last night as well, about how he's always battling to keep the quality of his supply up, and they're following prescriptions that are medically approved and all that stuff. So I think there are sharks and charlatans in everything.
Yeah, that's true. And I think going back to this point of I just want to make a living doing something that I love, I think it would be down to me working with each individual client and saying, what would make this more lovable? And what you're saying is, for you, what would make it more lovable is if you had a reliable recurring income. Yeah,
because it does all those amazing things that you don't have to keep selling to new customers. We know there's only 3 ways to make more money, don't we? Sell more things, sell things to more people, or can't remember the third. Oh, reduce
sell more to the people you've already got.
Well, no, it's reduce your costs is the third thing, and you get to a point where you're running your business so lean anyway, you can't reduce your costs unless you reduce spend on marketing, and that's never advisable. That's the last thing you should reduce spend on. So your options are to sell more things or sell to more people, and the recurring revenue thing just means that you're selling more things recurring to your existing clients. You don't have to keep going out looking for new clients all the time.
Yeah, and I don't think selling something. I think selling something recurring is not what people have in mind by this concept of I just want to make a living doing something I love. I think they're talking about practicing their art or their writing or something like that. I think they would call that a business where you're selling a subscription to a brain enhancing supplement.
Yeah, but the other thing is, people buy products, but they stay for the community, as we've said before. So, even I had a look at your artist website, that we were talking about the other week, and she's, she could definitely create a community around what she does. And that would be, even if it was only, remember that day, that monumental day that I will never forget, when we worked out that there was 400,000 nurses in the UK, and Claire Happy Nurses only had to find 16,000 odd of them to give her £5 a month, and she would be making $1 million a year. I've never forgotten that. And so really, it's not about selling high ticket membership. Even it's about creating a community where people will pay £5 a month to be in your gang, and find 16,000 of them, and then you've created a living for life doing what you love.
That's quite a lot of people. I'd rather charge a larger sum of money, say 10 times that, and have to find 10 times fewer people. But the principle holds, I agree.
Yeah. So, yes, I hope we've opened some people's eyes listening about the possibility of building a business without, doing it the traditional way, and also then about thinking about how can you create a community around doing what you love.
Well, I think if you love communities, which I do, then there's a good example of, what do I love that I would do anyway, whether I was being paid for it or not. And you do see fabulous examples of that being monetized all around us every day.
Yeah. First, a word from our sponsors. This week's episode was sponsored by Audio Jungle. To get some immediate atmosphere for your website, or your recordings, go to ownitthepodcast.com/audio jungle. So what's your word of the week, Judith?
This week, my word is ask.
Oh, go on then.
In last week's newsletter, I was talking about, are you asking for the business? And that's what it always comes down to when clients tell me, that they're a bit hard up and the leads have dried up and there isn't. Are you asking for the business? And I got one of my clients to go off and ask for things. And I was saying to people that they should ask for things whether they want them or not, to get practice at asking. Ask for a banana, ask for a banknote. If you see people in front of you playing with lots of things that they've got, ask them. Say, can I have one of those? And my client, who I got to go off and do this, very diligent person, was asking her brother for this and her sister for this and her cousins for this and her nieces for this, and was surprised by not only how easy it was to get things from people if you ask them for it, and how pleasurable it is to receive and how pleasurable it is for them to give. But sometimes we get a bit hung up, don't we, on selling and how difficult that's going to be. Well, actually, if you ask people for the business, it's surprisingly easy. So I was training my client in the business of asking, and she sent me a fantastic testimony and a jolly good story that I've turned into a blog post. And it was all around being prepared to get out of your comfort zone and ask for things.
I strongly recommend anyone listening to go and read that blog post, because I found it really very moving. And she was asking for some big stuff there, accidentally.
Yeah, she was. She was. And was it powerful? Was it a powerful story?
I really, really loved it. Yeah, I read it this morning with my coffee, and I really enjoyed it. So what's the title of that blog post, just so people can...
It's judithmorgan.com/ask. I think I've made it that simple because it's such a powerful concept.
Brilliant.
It's just being prepared to ask. You see, what's a good example here? Books is a good example. If you're at somebody's house and they've got lots of books and they're very abundant and you want one of them, say, can I have that book? And unless it's something very precious and very loved, they'll probably give it to you. And I think you'll if somebody's got 12 biscuits, can I have 3 of your biscuits? Yes.
3.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Whatever you ask, you don't ask for all 12. You could ask for all 12, of course, but if they've got 12 biscuits, it's probably because they want 12 biscuits. But I think it's interesting to just get into the habit of, when you see people have got more than one of anything or lots of things, ask, can I have one of those? And be surprised by how readily people will say yes. I think that was the first point she made in the blog post, wasn't it? Is they all said yes.
See, I'm thinking about myself doing it, and I there's a little squirmy feeling in my stomach.
Oh, I know. That's why I got her to do it. There is a squirmy feeling in all of our stomachs, but what the exercise is about is that squirmy feeling goes away when you realise how much people want to give stuff to you and how much they've got.
And how when I went to Rich's weekend last year, it's one of the quests he sent us out on involved us just asking for what we wanted, and it was the most challenging part of the whole weekend for me. But the second night when we set out on a different quest, because we'd done the first one and I'd managed to realise how difficult it was for me, I was much easier able to do the second quest.
You're braver, yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is your word of the week?
My word of the week is feelings, Judith. I've gone the first 50 odd years of my life being ruled by my feelings, and them almost incapacitating me to some degree to achieve things. And the reason it's much in my mind at the moment is because obviously, reading Andy's book and going to Rich's weekend and, doing all the journaling and everything's made me much more aware of my feelings. And I really do believe that largely I've got a grip on them now. And I've got a new client who is absolutely, every email she sends me is full of at least 3 or 4 negative feelings that she's experiencing, and how that is really crippling her in being able to take any action at all. So she has to fight her way through a fog of feelings just to get to the first thing she needs to do. And it just reminded me of how debilitating and crippling being at the mercy of your feelings are, and how we've just been talking about this today, haven't we? How actually, and in your illusion comments as well were very, because feelings are an illusion, aren't they? They're physical reaction to something that's happening in your brain, that's been caused by you attaching meaning to something?
I think one of the things that you learn from meditation or hypnosis is just to notice feelings without actually getting sucked up into them, and choose them. So, oh look, there's a feeling. It could go by, or I could choose. I feel this. It would be more helpful for me if I chose a better feeling to feel now. And thoughts as well, don't have to get hung up on them, let them fleet on by. Thoughts and feelings, they are a matter of choice.
Yes, and most people just don't realise that. And the more deeply you get into realising it, the more you hear it when you're listening to other people talk.
I know.
People who just haven't got a clue that these things are, you can actually, like you say, choose to let them float on by or be dominated by them completely.
Yeah.
And it's a shame it took me 50 years to realise this.
Well, interestingly, some of them are quite stubborn, and might take a little bit. That's where I think the havening exercise is quite useful, is that think of a block and immediately you release it. I don't know whether you've noticed, but I do. When you do the havening, I do a lot of yawning, which I know is when you're releasing stuff. And I think there are various techniques around. If you struggle with a particular thought or belief which seems constant and more stubborn and difficult to release, there are, EFT and NLP and havening and whatever it is, loads of techniques for just releasing, recognizing, blessing, thanking for the learning and releasing.
Something I did notice when I've done the havening thing about 3 or 4 times was that I get quite tearful at the final exercise, and that's it's not in a tearful in a sad way, it's tearful as in a physical release kind of way.
Yes, me too. And funnily enough, the yawning turns into the sort of yawn where a tear comes out of my eye. Isn't that interesting? Well, it is a release. It's a release. So we know it's working. That's the point. It's brilliant. Well done.
Who or what's impressed then, Judith?
Well, it's all on topic actually with the Paul McKenna. I don't know if you remembered me mentioning, I can't remember whether it was last week or the week before, a book that quite a lot of my clients are liking called Miracle Morning. Have you heard of Miracle Morning?
Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, they are. You have to get up. One of my clients gets up at 04:55.
Oh.
You don't need to get up that early, but you get up a bit earlier and you do you have a nice morning ritual of silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, writing, and various other things. And you can decide the shape of that chunk of time. And this is not really about either Paul McKenna or about the Miracle Morning, but it's about, I've noticed that, for instance, I'm on day 28 today of the Paul McKenna thing, but it's taken me 35 days to do the 28 days. And one of my clients who was absolutely devoted to the Miracle Morning, on Saturday she said, I couldn't do it, I just rebelled. So who's impressed me this week is people who fall off a regime but get back on, myself included. So, doing something more than not, but still reaching the deadline. Okay, it took me 35 days to do 28 days, but I've got to the 28th day. That's the point. So, allowing for the occasional rebellion, but getting back on. When we were younger and we used to go on proper old-fashioned diets, and when you broke your diet, you thought, well, that's it, it's ruined now. But actually, the key to success is getting back on, isn't it?
Yeah. What cognitive behavioural therapists would call black and white thinking, that is.
Yeah.
I learned at my time.
So my heroes of the week are those who fall off but get back on.
Well, my hero of the week is my sister Heather, who, as you know, well, we went to the jazz last night just to all catch up because Sarah was back, and her friend Katie, the conductor, was there. She's a soprano singer, but she also conducts choirs and things. And she's a tiny little thing and shouts very loudly at the rugby. And she also was a judge in a Welsh programme where they were judging choirs from around the world. So that's rather exciting.
Yes.
But Heather went through, as you know, had a really rough year. I talked her into making an album, a jazz album, which is absolutely beautiful. And she did that with Dave Newton, who's a very well-renowned jazz pianist. And then shortly after the album came out, we were gearing up to really, we did a launch party. I promoted it like mad. And it was getting loads of great reviews in jazz magazines and jazz radio shows and things. And then a friend of hers who'd been ill for a while suddenly took a turn for the worse, and Heather took it upon herself to nurse her friend to the point where she died in her arms. And then immediately afterwards, a second friend got sick and had nobody else to look after them. And Heather took that on and nursed that friend until they died in her arms. And it really made Heather feel very, what's the point of it all? So it almost put her off her music because she just felt that that it was just not worth doing because, you're not leaving anything, you're not doing it. Well, I actually feel you are leaving something if you made an album that people could listen to into the future. But anyway, so she wasn't feeling very great last night, and we were trying to encourage her to get up and sing because it's an open mic night, and she always sings very beautifully and everyone absolutely loves it. And she said, oh, no, I can't, she trotted out 100 reasons why she couldn't do it. Oh, no, I've had a glass of wine. Oh, no, we haven't been sitting in jazz. I feel rude just walking in and getting on the mic. Lots of reasons. And then Paul, who runs the evening, came out and said, are you going to sing then? And she said, oh, yes, oh, damn it, I'll get up and do it. And I'm not joking. She had the whole place entranced for Bewitched, Bothered and Bewildered in jazz style. And it was just the most beautiful thing I'd heard. And she was even attempting notes that we didn't think she'd ever go for because, it was just amazing, an amazing experience. And so there you go. There's someone who's got a million feelings and reasons not to do something, but she got up and did it anyway, and it blooming well worked.
Oh, that's brilliant. And of course she is a brilliant singer anyway.
I know she doesn't think she is, though. She doesn't think she's any good because nobody's come along and rescued her and given her a record deal and swept her off her feet and promoted her.
Well, she's done incredibly well anyway.
I know, and I think she could do more. And I've said to her, obviously any help I can give her, but let's do another album, I said. Let's get you and Dave out on the road. Let's get you singing to let's get some of that lovely applause coming that feeds your soul.
Yes. Well, that's actually what I end up talking to a lot of my clients. Let's do it anyway.
Yeah, do it regardless, because I think especially musicians, they should be making music regardless if anyone...
I agree.
She said, I don't want to go out and do gigs where nobody's listening, they're all chatting and drinking. I said, shouldn't matter if anyone's listening. It's the act of making music that should matter. Yeah. Doing your artist clients, don't they? They make art regardless, don't they? Well,
I encourage them to, because if you're an artist or a singer or a writer or whatever it is, do your thing.
Yeah, just do it. And it's the ripple in the pond effect, isn't it? Nothing happens in a vacuum. Nothing's going to happen if you're not doing anything. But if you're doing something, you're making ripples in a pond, and who knows where those ripples might come back.
Well, I know, especially from doing your thing. But actually, that principle works with doing anything. It works with crossing the road.
Well, I have encouraged her to start a podcast, which I think could be a very big ripple in the pond.
Oh, lovely.
Interviewing the wacky characters she meets on tour. So it's all good. But she impressed me last night just by the bravery of doing it despite herself.
I think she could play one of her own recordings in every podcast because, a podcast by a musician should also include music.
It should indeed. So she'd be able to make the theme tune, write the theme tune, perform the theme
tune. Yes, lovely.
Glorious. Well, thanks very much, Judith. It's been a really enjoyable week as always, and look forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah, see you soon, Nicola.
Bye. You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.